Hey guys, just a quick note before you start watching today's video, because I actually recorded this video last weekend when Strava was still all guns blazing in their lawsuit against Garmin. And of course, since then, as no doubt you will all know, Strava have dropped their lawsuit against Garmin. So this video may now seem a little bit dated, but I do still think there are some interesting conversation topics in there. And I think it's still a fun video with the lads anyway. So I've decided to put it out anyway, with this little disclaimer at the beginning. So yeah, don't come at me in the comments saying, why have you put this video out? Strava aren't suing Garmin anymore. I know, it was just recorded last week. Anyway, enjoy the video. So Strava has become a very popular talking point over the last couple of weeks, but not necessarily for good reasons. Good morning and welcome to the first properly cold ride of the year. It's about 6 degrees at the moment, so it's about, I'm going to double it at 30, about 42 degrees Fahrenheit at the moment. And while I appreciate that isn't mega cold, it's not exactly Canada cold, as one of my subscribers, Andrew, will no doubt tell me, but it has necessitated the winter boots for the first time this year. And my 5 feet socks from Galibier. Thankfully, the fingers have warmed up a little bit now. The blood has started to pump, so my fingers don't feel like they're about to fall off. And I'm also in my brand new Blackmore varsity gilet this week, which Nick from Blackmore Cycling Apparel very quickly sent over to me when I purchased it the other day. So thanks very much, Nick, for getting it over to me so quickly. It is definitely keeping that wind off my chest at the moment. All right, hang on. It's getting difficult to talk through that thing. Woo! That is cold. But we are out again on a Sunday morning, heading off to Brett's Cafe, one of our favourite coffee spots. And this morning's topic of conversation has been the recent wranglings between Strava and Garmin. Unless you've been living under a rock for the last couple of weeks, you'll know. I have. Yeah, like Shu has, because he's not heard about this. But if you haven't been living under a rock, you will know that Strava has sued Garmin. And we're going to get into that a little bit more in the video. But first, I'm going to warm up a little bit more, and then we'll talk a little bit more about why it feels like mum and dad are fighting. One thing I do want to do just before we get on to the Strava and Garver issue is to say a huge thanks to those of you that commented on my recent community post trying to find the hanger for Jimmy's gravel bike, which slapped last weekend. I have been having an absolute nightmare trying to find the correct hanger. I couldn't find the right one anywhere, and there were a number of comments on the community post that I put up that, like me, were finding there were a lot of lookalikes, but they just weren't quite right. And I was starting to think that it was a fully proprietary hanger that I was going to struggle to get hold of, because I did try to contact the AliExpress seller, and yeah, no contact. I mean, I guess you can't expect too much for an £80 aluminium frame from a random seller on AliExpress. But like my knight in shining armour, like an absolute legend, one of my followers, Jan, messaged me on Instagram to say, I don't know if this is the right one, but I found this on AliExpress. I have to be honest, after all my searching, I wasn't hopeful. I did click on the link thinking, oh, lovely of him to have looked, but I doubt it is the one, unfortunately. Lo and behold, it actually looks like it is the one. I can't be entirely sure yet, but it's only about 3 or 4 quid. So I'm buying a couple, and I'm hoping that that will get Jimmy's gravel bike back up and running. Watch this space. But again, thank you to all of you absolute legends that took the time out of your day to go and have a look for a derailleur hanger for me, and especially to Jan, who found the correct one. Nice one, guys, thanks so much. That is what having a YouTube channel is all about. Love that level of help and advice. Right, we are 34k in, and it's definitely time for something warm to eat and drink. So luckily we're not far from the cafe, so let's go and have a bite to eat, and then we'll talk about Strava versus Garmin. Right, lovely breakfast done. I would say nice and warmed up, but the fingers are absolutely freezing again, unfortunately. So Yeah, let's hope the blood gets pumping very soon and that changes. But we were chatting in the cafe about the fallout with Strava and Garmin. And you know that phrase, if it's not on Strava, it didn't happen? Well, very shortly, it may not be on Strava at all, because again, if you haven't heard, there is a massive lawsuit going on between Strava and Garmin at the moment, with threats to block syncing and lots of people cancelling their premium subscriptions. And it got me thinking, if Strava did suddenly disappear overnight, would it change the way I ride my bike? So if you haven't heard about the lawsuit, it basically revolves around Strava suing Garmin because they claim Garmin has infringed some of their copyrights around segments and heat maps. And Strava is claiming that Garmin broke a long-standing agreement between the two companies. In turn, Garmin has changed their API recently to say that any data recorded to Strava from a Garmin device must show Garmin's logo. Strava have called that blatant advertising and said that it's unfair. And there we have it, two giant companies that have effectively built modern cycling into what it is today, which leads to the feeling that mummy and daddy are arguing. And the worrying part is, if they can't agree, then that may end up meaning that our Garmin ride data doesn't sync automatically to Strava. And that little orange sums up world that we've all built up suddenly disappears. Now, the person in our cycling group who is probably most active on Strava, both cycling and running, is my good friend Jimmy. He also has a premium subscription. So I wanted to have a quick chat with him about how he thinks his riding or running might change, if at all, if Garmin rides did stop auto-syncing over to Strava. Jimbo, I've just mentioned that you are probably in this group the most active of Strava users, being the runner and cycler that you are. So cyclist, if with this current lawsuit, if Garmin data did stop auto uploading to Strava, would that change the way you run or ride? Do you enjoy the data? Do you like the data? Is it useful? Is it imperative? What do you think?
I would always do it and be on the move. That's the key thing. But I engage with it more, and I do study things on the Strava app. It would change it massively. So I use my Garmin watch, I get home, it uploads it to Strava, and I'm looking at mileage, heart rate and time. For example, goal setting. I'm very motivated by goals. This year we're doing Project 400 hours within the year. That breaks down to 66 minutes of exercise a day, and I track all that, and I use Strava to do that, and I find it very interesting. Last week I rode for an hour and it should have been 3 hours because my bike broke. I'm checking that and I'm trying to find points where I can find that hour, those 2 hours that I lost. And I like looking back on rides, and I like when it recalls it, and all that thing, that engagement and interaction with Strava is very important. Now, if it didn't happen, I would still move, but it would definitely change the experience massively for me.
Would you go as far as to download your Garmin Connect data and manually upload it to Strava? Or would you just use Garmin Connect as your de facto ride data?
No, I like the Strava format. I've always used Strava. I feel familiar with it, so I would take those extra steps to stick with the engagement with that. I would. I'm just, you know, when you get used to using things, it's like if you're using an iPhone or a Samsung, you just get used to things, and I like the format. All my data's logged on there. I'm used to it, so I'd definitely do that. I'd find a way of making it work.
I think having moved from Garmin watch to a Pixel watch and then gone back to a Garmin watch, I think the Garmin Connect UI is so much better than it used to be. And I think with more and more going behind the paywall on Strava, I think that Garmin's so much more useful. It's a UI you've got to get used to, right? It's like moving from an Android to an iPhone or the other way around. Yeah. You've just got to get used to the user interface, and then all of a sudden you think, oh, I don't know how I live without this one. But I think there's much more information on the Garmin one. And I agree with you what you were saying about heart rate's the big indicator that you know, especially when you're not a professional athlete. Right. I don't know if people can see that from the video. I use Strava because everyone else is on there, all of the friends that we ride with and everything else.
And that's actually the other point I was going to mention, because obviously Strava, the one big thing that Strava has over Garmin is the community element, which, as good as Garmin is, I think Garmin Connect has all the same data and everything like that, but it doesn't have the thumbs ups and the kudos and the comments and that community section, which I think is huge for Strava.
Well, what's the first thing you say when someone joins the group or you meet someone new? Are you on Strava?
Yeah.
Or get on Strava. And now we've got guys that have joined. Rick's on there. You're tracking his rides. couple of things we presented today. Rick, that was a brilliant ride.
Yeah.
Saw that yesterday.
Yeah, but I think if I want to deep dive any of the metrics, I go back to Garmin Connect, because I think so much of what I used to use on Strava has gone behind the paywall, but I can't really justify it when you've got Garmin Connect on hand anyway.
So that's actually another question. If data did stop auto syncing, would you cancel your premium Strava subscription, or do you like that deep dive into the data? Would you still keep up that?
I would keep that up, because I do like scrolling through it and checking in on it and looking at it and using it, and then so you've got the whole package. It's nice to check in on other people and get the likes and be able to have that community. So I had one of those guys out today, James, did his 5k yesterday. He got a good time. We chatted about it. So there's that community element. But I am interested in what it offers. I mean, what's the subscription? Is it 60 quid a year? Something like that. In the grand scheme of things, for what it can offer, I'm happy to pay that. I would stick with it because I'm out most days and I'm doing lots.
And I guess that's the point, that if you are a very active user of Strava and you like that data, then you probably will continue to use it, and you may well upload your rides manually, or your ride data manually from Garmin, because you're used to it. But if you are a casual user, which is I think where Strava will lose out, if you are a casual user and you just like to record your routes, you're not going to be the type of person that would download the Garmin Connect data and manually upload it to Strava. And that comes back to the phrase I used earlier, that if it's not on Strava, it didn't happen. And that's what half the people will say, but I think the other half will say, I don't really care about the data, the segments, the KOMs, anything like that. I just want to ride my bike. And that's the split. Those that are interested in the deep dive in the data, and those that just want to ride their bike. And so I guess the bigger question is not how we use Strava, but why we use it. Because when I first started cycling, Strava was this amazing discovery. Suddenly I could track my rides, I could see my different efforts, I could check out what my friends were doing, and I could compare myself to local legends. Not that I could ever really compare myself to them, but I could see how badly I was doing compared to them. But over time it became more than just a tracking app. It became a community, kudos, seeing what friends had been up to, having a chat with them about their rides. And I've had some awesome interactions on my Strava segments and having chats with some of my subscribers. So it has become much more than somewhere to just map and track your routes. So what would this all lead to? Well, we've already seen some premium Strava subscribers cancelling their subscriptions, either because of the lawsuit, but also because generally the rising cost of a Strava subscription, and probably also because they've just had enough of some of the features they've grown accustomed to disappearing behind a paywall, as Simo mentioned earlier. And that obviously all spells bad news for Strava, because with less money coming in and less active monthly users, well, that's not a good sign, is it? Right, well, there you go, a lovely 54 kilometres done, so what's that, 33, 34 miles, with mates, as ever. It was a bit chilly, the sun did come out at the end, it did warm up a bit, but yeah, it was very cold early on. But again, this lovely Blackmore gilet and this merino wool long sleeve jersey I've got on, yeah, they did the business this morning. So once again, thanks very much to Nick for getting the gilet over so quickly. But yeah, going back to the whole Strava thing, people, it seems, are now starting to move away from Strava and go into other ride tracking apps like Komoot or Ride with GPS. I certainly use Komoot to plan all of my rides, and it is very good. It's got some great features on there and does do a very good job. I don't know whether I would use it fully for tracking the rides, but it does also have a fairly decent community over there as well, because there are points on the map that you can add for particular running, hiking, cycling, gravel cycling, road cycling. You can add points on there that people in those different disciplines might find useful and interesting. And so it's always nice when you are planning a ride, I've certainly done this a number of times, where you will purposely go a little bit out of your way to have a look at something that someone in the community has added. So I think a lot of the complaining about Strava is just more reframing, or trying to remember at least, why we started riding our bikes in the first place. Was it for all the data, the segments and the KOMs, or was it purely for the love of cycling? But ultimately, what do I think is going to happen? Well, honestly, I think this will probably play out for a little while in the media. There'll be a load more speculation about exactly what is going to happen, whereas behind closed doors there'll be lots of meetings and chats, because Garmin is well known for not airing its dirty laundry in public. It does like to do things behind closed doors. With something like this, media speculation is never a good idea, so keeping things quiet, playing your cards closer to your chest, and trying to deal with things in-house is probably the best way to go. And ultimately, I think there will probably be some kind of out-of-court settlement. it will all get agreed behind closed doors and the status quo will remain. Everything will carry on as we know and love. I think in the short term it could, and probably has, hurt Strava a little bit, with people just getting a little bit teed off and deciding to move away from the platform and use other things. But what about you guys? What will you be doing? Are you premium users? Are you cancelling your membership? Have you cancelled your membership? Will you stop using Strava altogether? Are you going to use any other apps? It'd be interesting to hear what you guys are doing. Certainly from the straw poll that I've taken in my group, a lot of the people probably would continue using Strava, uploading their data from Garmin, because they just do love that deep dive into the stats. And if this whole subject is new to you, if this is the first you're hearing about it, then I'll leave a link to the DC Rainmaker video below, and I'll leave it up here somewhere as well, because he does a much deeper dive into the lawsuit and he's got a fantastic video talking all about it. So I'll link to that to go and check that out as well, to get the fine details of exactly what's happening. I'll certainly be keeping an eye on the lawsuit though, because if nothing else, I do find it very interesting on how this all plays out. But again, let me know your thoughts below. What do you think? Is it mum and dad arguing over nothing? Is this all a storm in a teacup? Will it blow over, or is this something bigger that's going to change the cycling landscape for good? One thing I just hope is that it doesn't stop people riding their bikes altogether, because again, we need to remember why we started riding in the first place, which hopefully for most people is because of the love of the sport. But yeah, leave your comments below, let me know what you guys think. It's always interesting hearing your thoughts. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Hope you found this one useful and interesting, and I will see you in the next one. Take care guys, ride safe.